Hello, everyone, and welcome to Everyday Heroes of Effective Giving, where we tell the stories of people who engage in effective giving on an everyday level. I'm Dr. Gleb Safursky, and this series is produced by Intentional Insights. And today we'll be hearing from one of the everyday heroes of effective giving, Christopher Watkins. And I will let him introduce himself and share his story of engaging in effective giving.
I'm Chris Watkins. I go by Chris Waterguy online because there's a lot less people with that name. It's easy to find me. And I'm a life coach. What I do is help people tackle procrastination, get better focus, that kind of thing. And so I do that through my website, chriswaterguy.com. And in terms of my involvement with effective giving, what effective giving means to me is really wanting to make a difference. That the feelings are important. The feeling of wanting to help is one thing, but there's also actually making a difference. And to me, the whole concept of effective giving is that you stop for a moment and say, well, something might be pulling at my heartstrings, but I also want to think, well, how can I help as much people as possible? I want to see an end to poverty. I want to see an end to malaria. I want to see an end to schistosomiasis, some of these diseases, suffering that many of us have never even heard of or thought about. And the way that's going to help end those things as quickly as possible is to start with the charities, the ways of giving, the ways of actually carrying out these projects to end poverty, etc., in the most effective way possible to help as many people as possible. If I'm giving to end blindness, I'd rather help 100 people to not be blind than to give one person assistance with coping with the blindness. And then in the end, I hope we get to a stage in my lifetime where there is no easily preventable blindness, where we've cured all of that, and we can make sure that everyone gets help to the full extent they can. So to me, that's how we're going to make the most difference. And yeah, absolutely, I'm passionate about that. I want to see it happen. Also, it's maybe incidental, but the community also is something to me, that hanging around with people in the effective giving community, Effective Altruism Australia, in my case, they're people that I've been really happy to connect with and be a part of this thing together with. So, yeah, all of that adds up to something I really want to be a part of.
Cool. Thank you very much for sharing, and I can definitely hear you about the community. I'm also excited about the effective giving community as well. And I think your passion really comes through, kind of where you want to really improve the world in a powerful way by focusing first on curing blindness, which is in very many cases so cheap to do, through addressing these basic problems, and then focusing on helping people out who are blind through, let's say, training up guide dogs, which is a very expensive endeavor. Makes a lot of sense to me. So now I'll ask you a second question that we ask our guests. What's your story of getting involved in effective giving?
So for me, getting involved in effective giving, it really started with discovering the effective altruism movement. So this was 2.5 years ago. I had I'd actually gone to a meetup group for Less Wrong Melbourne, so a group of rationalists, people interested in improving their thinking skills, learning to use the brain better is how I think of it. And I was happy to find that group. It was pretty interesting. And somehow through that, they promoted this event about effective altruism, and there were a couple of speakers, and there's a good turnout, probably 50 people there. And I suppose for me, as soon as I heard the term effective altruism, I thought, well, yeah, you want to be effective, and I have some involvement. I originally trained as an engineer, studied water engineering. I've lived in Indonesia for a couple of years, and I've been very interested in international development. Spent a lot of time thinking about, well, how do we make this effective? And actually, one of the projects that I'm involved with is called Appropedia, which is a wiki for sustainability. So, Appro as in appropriate technology, Pedia like Wikipedia, same platform, and it's a wiki, but with all kinds of projects, the sort of things you can't put on Wikipedia, and a lot of analysis and this sort of thing. And so for the past 10 years, and before that, while thinking about how to tackle this problem, I've been very interested in, well, how do we make the biggest difference, both in sustainability and international development? What's a way that we can have a highly leveraged impact? And for me at that time, getting involved with some other people to set up Appropedia made the most sense, and I still support that and work with it. And that's about knowledge sharing. So by giving people access to their own tools, rather than it being mediated through government agencies that might be corrupt, or large institutions that may or may not work very effectively, I figured, well, if you're giving people access to the knowledge and to the solutions themselves, particularly as mobile devices, as the internet becomes more accessible and people can print things out and take them around, I figure, well, this is a way we can really make a difference. And so with that background, I guess it's not a big jump to effective altruism and effective giving. It's that same thing of, well, there's all this stuff going on that, some of it is helpful and some of it isn't. So how do we actually choose what's most effective? And so when I heard of effective altruism, I already had this background, and it wasn't a case of needing to be convinced. It was just, where do I sign up? This is exactly what I already believe in.
Cool. Very good. So yeah, I can hear you, and I really identify with that. Of when I first heard about effective giving, that's something that really resonated with me as well. It's something like, oh, okay, yes, this is something that I've already been doing. I went into academia with the goal of impacting the world positively, helping people make the biggest difference in their lives, and with researching this stuff. So I wanted to research it and understand why people make the decisions they do, how people engage in thinking about their donations, their charitable work. But when I heard about effective altruism, that really resonated deeply with me as something I really want to get involved in. Cool. So, and now I want to move on to the next question for you. What are you doing right now yourself, Chris, in the area of effective giving?
Okay, so for myself at the moment, the ways I'm involved are most obviously that I've signed the pledge, and so I'm committed that as I earn money through my business, I'm donating to an effective charity, such as some split or whatever between, say, the Against Malaria Foundation and deworming initiatives, and thankfully there's the Effective Altruism Australia organisation, which has been set up recently, enables us to get a tax deduction for that, which is great because it means that for a given amount of giving, I suppose it's less sacrifice for me for a given amount that I'm giving, but it's also, well, I can give more without actually taking more out of my pocket at the end of the day. So there's the giving aspect. I've been promoting the idea to friends, so through the Giving What We Can pledge, givingwhatwecan.org, there was a bit of a push to get people to be aware of that recently, and one of my friends signed up when I posted a few things about it, both through my Facebook page and through there's a Facebook group that I run called Self-Improvement for Nerds, and I posted about it there a couple of times, and so I had a friend sign up and a few other people expressing interest, so I don't know if anyone else signed up and didn't tell me, but happy to just raise that awareness. And the thing I've been involved with most recently was this last weekend we had the Effective Altruism Global Melbourne edition, you could say, where Effective Altruism Australia, particularly Andrew Bird, and a whole bunch of volunteers, we put on, I was one of the volunteers, we put on this conference, and it was a small role for me. I saw a lot of work going into it from other people, and we had about 160 people turn up, which was great. A lot of them from Melbourne, but we had people coming from Sydney and Brisbane and New Zealand and Adelaide, and yeah, that was fantastic. Really enjoyed meeting people, and it was kind of inspiring to a lot of us, thinking about, well, how can we have a different impact in different areas, and just meeting people, getting exposed to a lot of ideas, not necessarily having to agree with everything that was put forward, but having a lot of food for thought. And so with the local branch in Melbourne, I'm planning to get more involved, and we have socials from time to time. We're talking about doing some different kinds of meetings to support people in what they do. Like, the social aspect is important, and it's going to be something we enjoy doing, but also thinking about what people here need and want locally, and trying to make that happen. So, yeah.
Cool. All right. Thank you very much for sharing that. Yeah, I can definitely hear you with the need to promote these ideas broadly. The Giving What We Can pledge and other forms of committing to effective giving. A good website for that is givewell.org. It rates and has in-depth research reports on the most effective charities, and also the Life You Can Save presents an impact calculator where you can actually evaluate the impact of your donations. So now let me move on to the last question. What do you envision as the mark you want to leave in the world, and what do you want to do in the future regarding effective giving?
I suppose, given that one of the main strategies I use in my coaching is mindfulness, how we bring mindfulness into everyday life and into our activities, I suppose it makes sense that I'm mainly focused on what I'm doing right now. What I want to do in the future is largely continue on the same path, continue uh, to give, and as my business grows, to think about maybe upping my level of contribution. That I'll have. Uh, yeah, I don't feel the need to have a super luxurious sort of life with a fancy car or anything. I actually the things that I value in life tend to be non-material, so that that will make it relatively easy uh, to give a higher proportion as I earn more. But more than that, I'm really interested in how to expand this idea. I was really inspired by Beth Barnes, I think, her TEDx talk at TEDx Oxford, where she talked about what we could do if the richest 10% of the world, or I don't know if it was even the richest 1% of the world, or the richest 10% in developed countries. Um, Obviously, I haven't prepared this part very well. But yeah, if those of us who are in developed countries, relatively well off, we're not living in poverty, if we gave just 10% of our income as a whole, we would be able to end poverty very quickly and have money left over for Mars missions and all of that kind of thing. So it's extraordinary how much good we can do if we have an increasing number of people giving what we can. So that really inspires me. I've spent time in Indonesia. My first trip there was part of this, trying to figure out how I can do something in the area of international development. How can I help people? And one memory that stayed with me from my first trip in 1995 was with the people that organised the trip. We visited a local cemetery, which was being used as a slum. Like there were marginalised people who just extremely poor that had they didn't have other places to live, and they'd set up a kind of shanty town in a relatively wealthy people's cemetery, so there was enough open space they could set up their shacks, that kind of thing. And this was an era of this was the Suharto era, so more blatant corruption. That now things have improved somewhat, but there was a push to try and get them cleared out, and so these people were living with a lot of uncertainty. And in particular, I remember meeting one family where a woman was like obviously afflicted in some way. Like one eye was not functioning, was closed, and she didn't know what was wrong. She said she'd had a lump in her breast, and it had progressed from there, and she wasn't able to. She didn't know what it was, what was wrong with her. But when she was asked, so have you gone to the hospital? She said, we need money to go to the hospital. How can I do that? And she had young kids, and I remember. We took some photos, and I remember the kids waving and smiling. Everyone was smiling, and just their ability to, I suppose, still still be positive in that setting really struck me. But also I want to live in the world where this is finished, where poverty is in museums. I'm not so much interested in a specific political ideology. And there are certain approaches to economics and politics that are going to have better impact. So, let's have an evidence-based approach to that. Let's think what is actually going to help people, and get to work on doing that, but not based on an ideology. Let's just do something and help fix this. And there's going to be sad stories like that. I probably should have told that story earlier so that I could end on get to a positive note more quickly. But there are, I have seen organisations doing tremendous good in Indonesia as well, and I've seen people passionate about making change. And look, when I talk about effective giving, I think there are specific things I want to give to because they're going to help the most people possible. But I really see it as a progression that we end malaria, we end the most desperate poverty, but there are still going to be people that are falling through the cracks that can't get access to medical care, whether it's in developed countries or in developing countries. And as we solve each problem, that we can progressively put more and more resources into the remaining problems until we resolve all these areas of suffering. And so that I'd love to see a time when it's like, I want to do something, I want to make a difference, but no, I can't do anything to end poverty because we've already ended it. So I'm going to have to find my meaning through something else. Maybe it's helping people who are maybe there's an issue with disability access or people who are suffering in some other way that's maybe not quite as blatant, but we can still need help. Maybe I can find meaning through that, or maybe I just find meaning through creative expression. And there's areas of creative expression, personal fulfillment that I'd love to be involved with, working with other people, doing something myself that I just enjoy, whatever. I would love to be at a stage where we struggle to find the obvious things to change, that we don't have to march for civil rights or campaign to end poverty or anything else, because that's done, that's finished, and we can move on.
Wow, what a powerful story. And that just makes me feel so sad to hear that Indonesian woman's story. But what a wonderful dream. What a wonderful dream of creating a world where that is just not going to be possible, and where I and you and all the other folks involved with effective giving have to choose some other way of expressing ourselves and finding meaning and purpose for ourselves. And it's so wise to focus on the biggest problems first. And that's what effective giving is all about, focusing on the biggest problems first and putting our resources to where they can make the most difference. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show, Chris. And this is the Effective Giving, the Everyday Heroes of Effective Giving series, produced by Intentional Insights at intentionalinsights.org. Thank you all for watching, and have a good day. Bye-bye.